Hello, welcome, and sorry. Happy Friday, everybody. Welcome to the Friday live stream with the boys from Maple Bitcoin, your three favorite Canadians who are Bitcoiners anyways. I'm joined by my good friends Forrest, Rajat, and I'm Jor, and it's a pleasure to be with all of you today. We're going to have a fun show today. It is July 4th, Independence Day in the U.S., so big shout out to the Americans watching the stream today. Happy 4th of July. Don't blow yourself up with the fireworks. And let's get right to it, boys. We're talking about exchanging dollars for Bitcoin today. We're gonna have a little bit of a thought experiment, I think, here to kick off the show. We got a couple different things to run through, and just like every show, we'll save the comments for the end. So if you do have a question, make sure you throw it in the chat, and we'll try to star them and get to them later on. But where should we start, boys?
Well, let's start.
No, go ahead.
Yeah,
go ahead.
I was just going to say, yeah, let's explain what we even mean here. Can trade everything you don't need for Bitcoin. The other kind of title we had was exchange your dollars for Bitcoin while you still can. What does that even mean? So do you guys think that in the future there's a time where you won't be able to exchange dollars for Bitcoin?
I don't. So I think at some point, I don't know if there's going to be a time when people don't want dollars for their Bitcoin, but over time they'll want more and more dollars for their Bitcoin. That's for sure. At some point, I mean, I do think that I say it all the time. Bitcoin runs out at every price, and at some point that's going to happen, right? At some point, there's going to be the people who have Bitcoin that want dollars for it will run out, right? And at that point, I mean, obviously the price is going to be way higher. I think I would want to start with, if you have assets. See, this is where I think it's most difficult for people. The people who have assets aren't paying attention to Bitcoin. So they have millions of dollars worth of real estate. They have millions of dollars worth of stocks, but they don't even have one Bitcoin.
We should talk about that a little bit. Let's dive into that a little bit, because keep going, Rajat, but I want to explore that a little bit further in terms of like why people with assets aren't really rushing out of them right now.
Yeah, I think they just don't understand it. They're looking at it from the wrong perspective, right? They're looking at it from a cash flow perspective. They're looking at it from volatility. Like they see that all these other assets aren't as volatile, but there's a reason for that. And I think part of it is because they're manipulated.
Yeah, and volatility is vitality, right? Like when you look at TradFi, like the QQQ or tech stocks are volatile, but they're also the best performing stocks that you can buy. Like, and so what is the problem with volatility, right? If you can't, the only problem with volatility is if you have a short mindset, if you a short time frame, if you're trying to trade it, or you expect that you're investing more than like you're investing money that you're going to need access to for living expenses or something. That's the only time that volatility is a problem. Otherwise, volatility comes with extra gains, and that's what we're all here for, is total return and purchasing power increasing.
Yeah. So I just wanted to bring up this chart. What you were saying was completely relevant for us. I agree with you. I just wanted to bring up this chart, and I wanted to ask you guys, how is this not manipulated?
Yeah, that was the point that I was going to make too, is like the people who have these assets like real estate, like the S&P 500, like they've seen it go up and up and up and up, and they never are concerned that it's going down. But as Jack Mallers has been talking about recently, and I kind of want to dive into that a little bit today, is like it's going up in what? It's not going up against gold. It's not going up against Bitcoin. It's going up in dollars. But because it's not so much that it's going up, it's because the dollar is losing so much value. So if you're somebody who's holding these assets, your life hasn't changed very much. You've seen the year-over-year gains of like 8 to 15% year-over-year, which is keeping up with inflation. But it's the people who don't have these assets who are really hurting right now.
Yeah. Well, that S&P chart that's up and to the right, if you were to look at the dollar value chart, so like the value of a single dollar, it's the exact opposite. It starts high and goes low. So they're completely inverse to each other. Yeah. And that's not by chance that the S&P 500 goes up in relation and because of the devaluation of the dollar, because it's priced in that dollar that's going down in value. That's the denominator.
Yeah, this is the consumer price index. It's just going straight up. So the best thing that you can do is get rid of everything you don't need and buy Bitcoin. If you have extra real estate, you have extra stocks, like you're just buying stocks because you need a store of value for some reason. Let's say, for example, if you're buying the S&P 500, I think you should get rid of it for Bitcoin, because if you're buying the S&P 500, it's because you don't understand any of the individual companies in that index. If you understood the individual companies, you'd want to buy the most profitable ones, the ones that have the best business plan, the ones that are the most promising for the future. You wouldn't buy 500 shitty companies, right? Why would you buy 500 shitty companies if you looked at all of their financial statements? So in that case, you're diversifying because you don't even understand what you have. Well, what are your thoughts on that?
How many people do you think actually know what they're holding in their retirement fund, but B, know about the companies that they're holding within that retirement fund? Like, what percentage would you guys actually give it? Like, would it be 5%? Less than that even?
I think it's impossible. You can't do due diligence on 500 companies. You can't.
Yeah.
You can't
Agreed.
really know everything about these 500 companies. There's no way. There's no way. Not even financial investors that recommend it, the mutual funds that have the same amount of stocks in them. There's no way these people know everything about it. They just say they look at certain ratios. So they might put like a mutual fund or an ETF company that might create their own ETF, something like that. They're going to add in companies and stocks of companies just based on like Sharpe ratios. Like, oh, this one has a uncorrelated to the rest. So if we add it in, we diversify and we lower the risk of the entire fund. They don't know anything else beyond that about that company. They're just going to add it in because of that reason alone. So there's a ton of people that are investing in stuff that they just have no clue about. Absolutely.
Do you guys think that the S&P, I actually just thought of that while you were saying that, Forrest. Do you guys think that the S&P 500 is just the companies that are in the biggest bubble? Right?
Well,
Because
yeah,
they're
I
the
mean,
biggest market cap.
You know what bubble they're in is the US dollar, because
The
they're
US
all
dollar
US,
bubble, you're
they're
right.
all US companies, and they
Yeah.
all benefit from being closer to the money printer. Like
Yeah.
as a corporation, you can get very close to the money printer because you can get relatively cheap corporate debt, which is, that, I mean, that's what strategy is doing at this point, right? They're just arbitraging their ability of being a corporation to finance debt at lower rates than we can as individuals. And then they're betting that the interest rate is going to be less than the value of the Bitcoin that they can acquire by bringing that purchasing power to the present. So that's all these other companies are doing too, but they're taking that cheap debt and liquidity they have access to, and they're investing it in their business, which likely will return as much as the money as much as the money debasement, not more, not less. A few of them will outperform Nvidia, Meta, Google, Microsoft, Apple. These, the top 10, they'll outperform on average, but the other ones will stay in line with money debasement because they're fighting. They're benefiting from it, but they're also, everything about their business is also subjected to that. So like, the input costs, labor costs, all of this is all a big drag on them as well, because they're participating in and using the fiat system.
Yeah.
I feel like that's every business in the next couple of years is going to go. Well, they have been going through it already, but they're going to go through the exact same problem of like, they just, no matter how much how can I say this? The cost of everything, their inputs just keep going up and up and up. And at some point they're going to reach, it's going to hit the average consumer where they just can't raise their prices high enough anymore to actually satisfy the demand there. So in other words, like the input costs keep coming up, like the quality goes down, the input costs go up, everything keeps going up, and they just keep having to raise their prices or lower the quality of those products. And eventually at some point, whether it's a private company like a mom and pop shop or a public company, there's going to come a point where they just can't raise their prices high enough and people will actually be willing to pay for their products or services anymore. And that's the companies who are storing their reserves in fiat. I feel like the companies who are actually backing it with Bitcoin and have something sustainable on there that isn't losing and being devalued constantly, I feel like the fiat companies are just going to slowly melt away. And it's kind of sad, but like, there's really nowhere else for them to go right now. Like, what are they supposed to do? If all their costs keep going up, they can't raise their prices forever. At some point, there's going to be, where people just say, sorry, I can't afford it anymore. Like the products that people use every single day, they're just going to say, I can't afford it anymore.
This is where I think, I think actually without Bitcoin, I think they could raise their prices forever because it's just nominal, right? And it's just in line with the extra money that's being added to the system. But Bitcoin breaks this. Bitcoin is the life raft, but it's also what has allowed people to step out of this and realize that it's we don't need prices to keep going up. We can actually hold our purchasing power in Bitcoin instead. But I think it's like how dollars can fall infinitely. They can constantly fall another 99%, right? They can constantly fall another 99% until you need a wheelbarrow of them to buy something.
Yeah.
They're not very useful at that point, but they're technically could still be. I mean, there's technically still the use case of being able to purchase something with them, even if it's an insane amount of them. In other currencies, it's like, billion Japanese yen, right? Like, that's like, I don't know how much that is, but it's like 100,000 yen is like $1,000 Canadian, something like that, right? So there's sort of this nominal factor with dollars, but I think that Bitcoin really breaks that system and really makes it so that if these companies continue to just raise costs and they don't hop on the life raft of Bitcoin, that they're really screwed, because there'll be other companies that do hop on the lifeboat of Bitcoin, and then they won't have to raise their prices as much, and they will be the reset. And all these companies that don't, they'll just go out of business because they aren't competitive anymore. Bitcoin makes the businesses more competitive if they adopt it on their balance sheet.
Can we talk more about why the price of everything falls in terms of Bitcoin? So why I was thinking about something where I don't personally care about how much Bitcoin I have. I just want more ways to create value so that I can accumulate more. I think the chase of getting it is more fun than just watching your wallet, right? Who cares about what your wallet looks like? So there was actually a comment here from somebody. They said, let's see here. Here it is. I want to retire now and just live poorly until my Bitcoin appreciates. See, the problem with this is that if Bitcoin just goes sideways for the next 10 years, then you're going to have used up your Bitcoin. You would have been left with nothing.
Mm-hmm.
And you wouldn't have any skills. So what are you going to do then? Right. I mean, I get what you're saying, Wyatt Entertainment. I completely understand. But the way that I see it, if you're doing something like this, and I know you're probably joking. I know you're not going to retire or anything like that. But if you're doing something like this, you're kind of putting yourself in that situation where, let's say in the last couple of days, I think we saw something like 80,000 Bitcoin move.
Mm-hmm.
How many whales and OGs do you think can keep dropping Bitcoin into the market? And how long will that happen for? Could that happen for the next 10 years? If that does, and you want to retire now, and you actually do retire now, and you don't have enough Bitcoin to cover yourself until whenever, at the end of it, you'll be left with no Bitcoin, and you'll have to do a job, and you're going to be probably earning Satoshis. You're going to be earning like 30 Satoshis an hour at that point. So avoid that, I would say. Try to, if you want to retire with Bitcoin, what I would say is see what the price of Bitcoin goes to at the bottom of a bear market, and then go based on that. So let's say, for example, if you have one Bitcoin and the next bear market, the price goes down to 50K, can you survive on 50K? No. So don't retire, right? But if you have one Bitcoin and then the price goes to $10 million, you can probably retire if that's the bear market bottom.
Yeah,
right?
and I think there's I mean, maybe I'm assuming a little bit here, but somebody wanting to retire today, it's likely because they don't like what they do for work,
Yeah.
which is totally fair. I completely understand that. I'm blessed enough to, well, for the past like 7 years, beyond just the last year, I guess, I was doing something that I didn't really like to do. I was building a business. It was successful enough, but it wasn't something I was super passionate about. So I wanted to quit all the time. I wanted to move on. I wanted to find something else. And so I think Bitcoin. Okay, so what I'm getting at here is Bitcoin can allow you to have choices. If you have enough Bitcoin, if you're thinking, well, maybe I don't just fully retire, but I take a risk in my what I do for work, what I provide value with. I have a good friend actually who recently quit his job. He's relying a little bit on his Bitcoin, but he's building a business. In the meantime, he's working on two businesses and he's taking a risk. Yes, it will take a dent into his stack, but he's not retiring. He's just using Bitcoin as a way to improve his life so that he can work on something that he wakes up and doesn't feel dread going and doing. He can actually do something that he loves. So I think that's kind of more of the use case, I would say, in like today for the vast majority of people, depending on your age, of course, but for the vast majority, I think using Bitcoin as sort of like a way to lean on it and be able to improve your life in other ways, which could be just changing what you do to provide value to the world and get value back.
Yeah, speaking personally, that's exactly what I did. Like when I left my job in 2021, I had Bitcoin, and I knew that having Bitcoin kind of on the back burner allowed me to do that. I had to spend a little of it. I had to sell a little bit. But I was okay with that because I was actually using it for something that was going to further my future productively. And so there was a risk. And when I think about it, as you were talking through that, Forrest, I was thinking like, that's what essentially Bitcoin does. And I think that that's going to be the businesses that actually survive this next decade. It's the businesses that have Bitcoin because, again, prices keep going up. There's going to be a ton of volatility in all these different industries. And if you don't have something solid, like as an insurance policy like Bitcoin, you're going to be in a lot of trouble because like the companies that keep their reserves and cash, their reserves are just going down and down and down over time. Even if the amount's going up, the purchasing power of those dollars are actually going down. And so when they do have some tough times, whether it's a year or two, with Bitcoin there, they can weather that because that reserve that they were sitting on wasn't debased by a $3.3 trillion big, beautiful bill. So it's the same for people. It's the same for businesses. Unless you're actually using Bitcoin as like a savings technology and like a reserve, you're going to have a hard time getting through those highs and lows of life.
Mm-hmm.
So what I wanted to say there was with prices coming down, like everything you guys said there, it encouraged you guys to be entrepreneurs and to create value in a way that solves problems for other people, right? So what we do here? We're basically helping as many people as we can. Everybody who's listening right now, we're helping them to make better financial decisions, to buy Bitcoin so that they can retire sooner.
Mm-hmm.
The way that I see things going after, let's say for example, once Bitcoin is fully adopted, everybody has it. Everybody's going to want Bitcoin and they're going to solve real life problems. So when Bitcoin is money, our content is going to be irrelevant because people are going to be using it normally, right? So people around the world are going to be working to create value so they can earn Bitcoin, and they're going to do that by solving problems. So they're going to extract value from from other markets, and they're going to take it for themselves and they're going to bring it to themselves. So let's say, for example, if somebody wants to make money and they want to start developing real estate, essentially what they're doing is they're taking value out of the existing supply of houses and they're putting it they're putting it in their own pocket. I think with Bitcoin is going to encourage more people to do these kinds of things. It's going to encourage more people to produce better food. I've noticed, I don't know if you guys have, but I've noticed that there's a lot more companies. I guess because of social media, people are just talking more about it. There's a lot more companies that are producing oils that are not seed oils. So I went to Costco. I don't know if I mentioned this here, but I went to Costco a few days ago, and they had beef tallow, and I've never seen that before. So what this is what it does is who knows, maybe the person who's creating it, maybe the company who's creating it, maybe they're Bitcoiners and maybe they
Guaranteed.
haven't mentioned it, right? But let's say, for example, if there's another Bitcoiner, let's say you guys are Bitcoiners and you guys come across a farm, you buy it, and you see that you can now produce cattle to sell for Bitcoin. And then you make better and better cattle, you take better and better care of them, they have a better life, your customers get better food, and makes more abundance in high quality beef, and
Yes.
that decreases the price, right? So it's all interconnected. It's so crazy. People think that, oh, how is our food going to be affected by Bitcoin? Of course, it's going to be affected because garbage in, garbage out, right? If we
Yep.
start with a foundation of garbage, which is fiat, we're going to end up with garbage in our bodies. We're the end product of fiat. If we eat crappy foods, we're going to have crappy bodies, right? So that I think that what Bitcoin does is it fixes all of that. It fixes all of that. It makes it so that people have an actual incentive to create high quality food. They can get paid in Bitcoin and they can save the value that they receive properly instead of competing with all these produced foods, all this ultra processed garbage that we're eating today. If you go to Costco today, probably 80-90% of the things have seed oils in them. I think this changes everything.
Yeah, I was actually, so every week I drive into the city here and I drive past a ton of farms, right? I'm in the prairies here. And so I see farmland, I see cattle, I see all these different operations going on. And one day I was thinking, like, what are these farmers going to do when Bitcoin becomes like the thing? Once farmers understand that Bitcoin is like a compound annual growth rate of 60%, that's the hurdle rate for them. They will be thinking at some point, should I buy this new tractor or should I buy Bitcoin? Should I buy these acres and expand my farm or should I just buy more Bitcoin? And then I was thinking, like, farmers have such unique skill sets. They're willing to do things that not a whole lot of people are, especially cattle farmers, right? And so I think that skills like that are actually going to be exactly what you want to have, kind of what we're talking about here. Like, you want high quality skills because that's the only way that people are actually going to part with their Bitcoin.
Yeah.
So I was like, my first thought was like, farms are going to shut down. They're going to all centralize and, just buy Bitcoin instead. But then I was like, no, they're actually going to be able to add more value because they have more skills, and they're actually going to be able to get more sats from people than everybody else because they have such a high quality operation there.
Even things like plumbing, right? Because people are still going to need a place to live, right? And a lot of people say, oh, if Bitcoin's value keeps going up, they're not going to spend it on everything. They're not going to starve themselves to death, right? They're not going to live in a house with a clogged toilet for the rest of their lives to save sats, right? So if you can develop these skills where, let's say you're an electrician, let's say you're a plumber, let's say you can build houses, I think physical trade skills are going to do extremely well on a Bitcoin standard because those are skills that you learn. It's proof of work, right? All of that is proof of work. If you don't have the proof of work, then you can't do that kind of work. You can't build a brand. You can't get enough customers. But if you do that, let's say you start today, you start learning things today. It takes time to learn those skills, and then it takes time to actually to figure out what you actually want to do, and all of that compounds. And by the time, let's say 10 years from now, if you're a plumber, if you're an electrician, you could be charging $1,000 an hour. Who knows what $1,000 will be at that point? But $1,000 is probably going to be way more than minimum wage.
And when you have a money like Bitcoin that has absolute scarcity, then people actually have to start making better decisions in terms of, like, hey, am I going to pay to fix my plumbing or am I going to go out and eat supper tonight? Like, it's not both, right? It's not both. It's one or the other because you have this scarce money that it's just not flowing around like it is right now. People are going to have much harder decisions on how they actually want to part with their sats. And the people who are going to be on the receiving end of those sats have to make damn sure that they have high quality products or their service is like the best in the area, or they're just not going to have any customers.
Yeah.
It's really going to just rebase everything. It's really just going to set it back to, are you providing something of actual value? If you're not, then you need to do something else, because the world, like, this is already how the world works, but it's sort of manipulated with dollars because they flow around so much, because there's so much freshly printed ones. They're not worth anything. They're constantly going down in value, but they still flow around way too easily. Interest rates are actually, in my opinion, manipulated to be really low. Because there's a backstop, because they're just freshly printed as well. So, like, if you're to and there's no risk, right? When you go to a bank and you take out a mortgage, they can give you a really low interest rate because they just freshly created that money. They don't actually have to put up that money for you to receive it. They only have to put up a fraction of it, fractional reserve
Right.
lending. If it was Bitcoin and they had to actually give you the Bitcoin, they would probably want a pretty decent return because they're really risking something, and they had to have that asset to begin with. So just to sum that up, that's just clear manipulation of that metric, which is interest rates. We looked at the CPI earlier, that's manipulated. When certain really key metrics like these get manipulated, it skews out to everything, and the market has no idea how to actually value things because of all these manipulated metrics. So if we got onto Bitcoin standard, it's going to, again, just rebase everything, and then we can actually know what the market wants, what the market values. And bullshit companies out there that don't do anything, don't provide enough value, they'll go under, and people will say, oh, this is Bitcoin's fault, everybody's hoarding Bitcoin and whatever. But it's like, yo, you just didn't deserve to exist. Like, this idea wasn't valued by the actual market. You were skating by on a broken system. So I'm looking forward to that. It's going to be slightly chaotic, and it depends how we get into the Bitcoin standard and how gradual and all of this and how much unwinding there is. But I'm not opposed to a little bit of chaos, considering that that's to be expected when something breaks. And I hope the fiat system breaks.
You said, Forrest, that bullshit companies are going to go down. And I think it's also bullshit people are going to go down too. Like, if you think about the amount of people out there right now working for like government agencies or the government or politicians, they're, in my opinion, they're bullshit people. They do not add value. They extract value from people who are working, right? That's where the majority of our tax dollars go to funding these different departments and initiatives, subsidizing these different companies that the government wants to see succeed. It's all manipulated. Mm-hmm. And it's not right. It's not nature. And so I think that bullshit companies are going to disappear, and I think bullshit people are going to disappear too. Because, in that world where you have to add value or else you're going to, go under, then they don't have a job anymore. How many people out there right now are just going to work every day and doing absolutely nothing, but still getting paid? That's not reality. That's not nature.
Somebody there said celebrities will go down. Those are the BS people. I don't think celebrities will go down. I think the wealth will just be distributed to more people.
It also depends what celebrity you're talking about too. Like Hollywood, celebrities, they're already gone. But like celebrities who are actually adding value to the world, depends how you define a celebrity.
But even then, let's say, for example, you talk about somebody like Drake. Do you guys think that Drake would have gotten so big if he didn't have the connections? I'm sure. I don't know. This is just purely what's it called?
It's a good thought experiment.
Just speculating, right? So do you guys think that Drake would have done what he's able to do if he didn't have the people backing him? I'm sure he had people backing him. You don't just blow up like that, right? You don't become an actor. How many people can you guys imagine being an actor, or your kid being an actor at like 14 years old? Probably not.
Yeah. Right? So, I mean, if he benefited from the manipulated system, then, in the future, it would be hard for somebody to sort of get pushed up like that. Like, again, like Drake is an example, but even if you look at like, I think a better example is like the K-pop bands. Like, they are literally orchestrated to be successful. Like, they are not a natural thing at all. They're like, let's find these individuals, we'll create a super group, and we will, as like the Korean government, we will try to export this as media to bring more money back into Korea. And so there's this huge machine built around creating these. And they did this in America too, like, with boy bands and girl bands and all this stuff. And so I think that's like a really prime example of something that just like wouldn't really work as well on a Bitcoin standard, because there's that entire system also benefits from being close to the money printer and the fiat system. And, it's easy for them to take that risk with cheap money. But I think we've seen already the phasing out of celebrities that are completely orchestrated. We've seen a lot more grassroots, honest individuals that are just, like, yeah, like the biggest YouTuber on YouTube for a really long time was PewDiePie. He was just some Swedish guy, who was a gamer, right? It's just like he didn't have
What was
anybody
his name?
backing him. PewDiePie, Felix.
I remember
Like
that
he's just a regular dude, and like right now, he's actually doing some really cool stuff. He converted all his computers over to Linux. He like built his own like security camera so that he doesn't have to use like Nest.
Wow.
He's de-googled his phone. Like he's just doing these side quests as an individual. He has like 100 million subscribers, and like it's
Wow.
just him. He's got no team behind him. I think he hasn't one person as an editor.
That's so
Like,
cool.
and he's like one of the most famous people on YouTube, and at one point was the most subscribed until basically Mr. Beast beat him out. But Mr. Beast is sort of like the example of creating something maybe a little bit less natural, right? I mean, he started out natural, but created this whole system to just push in this certain way. But yeah, I think we're going to see less and less of that being successful. I think we're going to see more and more authentic celebrities out there.
Yeah, I heard that I heard a rumor going around the internet that the Canadian government actually did the same thing with Maple Bitcoin as K-pop to try to influence the world.
Hell yeah. Carney is our main backer.
But I think that going on those lines, like if we think about the music industry, like Frajal was talking about Drake there, I do think that music already has started to really decentralize. And even the fact that a guy like PewDiePie can become the biggest person on YouTube just goes to show you where this whole thing is going to. And so we've definitely moved away from like the music industry choosing somebody with some talent and then like putting all their chips into them and like, all the greasy stuff and very disgusting things that also happen in that industry, and kind of like having control of people in a way where they put a song out and it becomes popular, then they're forced to just keep going and going and going just because of the record label, right? And so we're already seeing a shift away from that, where artists have started to use different platforms. I can't think of the name of them right now, but just to kind of self-fund themselves, right? Like a
SoundCloud and stuff.
Yes, that's what I was looking for.
They share their content on there, yeah.
And so we're going to go even further than that, because SoundCloud is still kind of attached to the fiat system, where that has to go through a bank account first before they can access it, right? And whenever there's somebody there, like a bank, if they don't like what they're doing, they can stop that. They can stop payment from going to the person on SoundCloud. But I'm sure in years from now, and it kind of already exists right now between Nostr and Toonster.
I was going to say Nostr.
Yeah, like there's no banks needed there anymore. It's literally direct peer-to-peer, consumer to artist. You can support them if you want to. You don't need a record label. You can produce this music yourself. Like the shift has been happening for a while now, but we're finally kind of like getting to the really sovereign aspect of it.
Yeah, there's like Sendwave, which I think uses Nostr and Lightning, and it's the UI looks very similar to Spotify. And it just lacks the audience, but eventually, if that's something that people value, they'll start to go over to platforms like that. Yeah, I mean, we've seen this. We've seen this happening. It's everything is becoming more decentralized.
Yes.
The central planners are losing power in all aspects. They're going to grasp onto it in all sorts of ways, and I would say the financial central planners still have probably the most grasp on what they have. But Bitcoin is a direct attack on that, and it's pretty effective. Like, I know we're in an echo chamber. We look on Bitcoin Twitter, all this, but these people, we all know what's going on here, and we're all ahead of the curve. There's only 1% of us that hold Bitcoin, and what fraction of that actually understands it. But I think it's a network effect, and it's a mind virus. It's a worm that once it implants in your head, it's hard to get out, and you want to share it, you want to spread it, and then it's that natural network effect that is very, very powerful. And I don't see it getting derailed either. Like, I just see it getting stronger and stronger. The network effect of the mind virus of Bitcoin.
Can we talk more about like the BS jobs? More about how many jobs today are just complete BS, and like with Bitcoin, like with this mind virus that we've created, that we've not we've created, but the mind virus that we're spreading, how it changes all of that. So I was thinking about how even my job, the work that I was doing, it was complete BS. What I was doing was I was at a bank. I'd help really rich people to buy bonds. And then this was like companies, this was individuals, people who have their own personal funds. Let's say they have a family office, whenever they need to get cash, basically I'd be rebalancing their portfolios. So like if you think about it, it's just layers on top of layers of bullshit.
Yeah.
It's just, it keeps going and going and it doesn't stop. Because today, if I were to say to a random, like let's say for example, if I was to say to somebody that bond trading is bullshit, they'd probably look at me like I'm a crackhead. Right? But then they don't understand that the base layer of money is bullshit. So everything that's built on top of it is also the same thing, right? It's all just garbage. I used to like the way that I used to work at a bank. There's probably millions of people around the world. I think the banking industry is something like $30 trillion or something like that, maybe bigger than that. It's insane, but
That's crazy.
that's crazy to me, right? I mean, all
Yeah.
the people that work there, they're doing it because they want to make good money. How much of those resources could be put into other actually useful jobs?
You know what? You know what really sums it up for me is just how scared a huge amount of the workers are around the world of AI. Right? Like AI was like when it was coming out and like the LLMs and stuff, and like it's like the people that realize they're like, oh, my job is seriously in jeopardy, or like the amount of positions in this specific part of the business is going to be limited because now one person can do the work of 10 with the assistance of
Yeah.
AI. And it's totally true. Like I have just been, I use AI every single day. Like I'm now a software developer, and it's like I didn't learn anything about it. All I need to know is the English language. All I need to know is an idea that I have. I can use Cursor, and I can develop entire websites, mobile apps, all this stuff that I'm working on. Integrate Lightning on it using AI. Like it just knows so much, and that So I've now taken the job. Like if I had that idea and I really wanted that business to happen, I would have had to in the past hired a few people to develop that. Those people aren't getting a job now.
Yeah.
So was their job really that, like, is it really that useful in today's age? Probably not. Like so and that goes to so many other things. Like my wife was just talking about this. Like there's this receptionist that we're dealing with, and it's kind of annoying. And then it's like she's just like, why doesn't this place just use Jane app, where you can just create appointments? You don't even need, like, why even have a receptionist at this point? You can just automate that. Like, think about how many people are receptionists. You go to the store, there's self-checkouts. Like, how many of these jobs? Like, it goes all into so many different fields. Like, Rajat, you were talking about the financial sector you were working in, but it's everywhere.
Yeah.
It's everywhere that these jobs are just redundant.
Yeah.
And so, like, what happens down the line? I'm not sure. Like, what happens to all these people that, are working at something? I mean, I hope that we go into the world of actual abundance that we could actually be living in. And when money has some scarcity to it, you have the ability to have abundance in the rest of the world. And so that's what my belief is with Bitcoin. I think Bitcoin could usher in the age of abundance of all the other things that we need as humans. And I think we will have a lot more options to work on things that aren't just about making money. They're about providing value. Maybe you don't get as much money back, but you're providing more value, and you're doing something you actually enjoy. Like, that's the future I see, and it's only possible because of Bitcoin, in my opinion. Because if AI comes in, takes everybody's jobs, and we don't have something like Bitcoin, I think it could be really bad for a lot of people.
God.
Actually,
It'd be off the rails.
It's also the other side of things, right? Like today, people can hire employees because they can borrow money. So on a Bitcoin standard, they're not going to be able to do that. They're not going to be able to borrow money the way that we can borrow it today. I actually think that, I mean, of course, the assumption here is that Bitcoin is going to completely replace fiat. But on a Bitcoin standard, there's not going to be as much borrowing. There's probably going to be borrowing to start businesses, but there's not going to be as much borrowing. There's not going to be as many BS purchases, people buying things that they don't need, and more resources will. I think it's just that more resources will go directly into the things that we need. Like we
Totally.
need houses. We don't need how many newer phones do we need? How much better of a laptop do we need? Right? Of course, the demands are going to keep increasing, but we keep focusing so much energy on electronics, and there even Apple has been sued for damaging their phones because they want people to buy more. So we're putting so much time and energy into making people buy more stuff, but time and energy isn't being put into the things that we actually need, like healthier food. Why are we relying more on 3D printed stuff, right? Stuff that's coming off of a machine, an assembly line. Why are we eating that? We should be eating stuff that grows in the ground.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Forrest, you kind of mentioned there, where does this whole thing go from here? Like with what you're talking about there, as people are getting fired and be replaced. I think what's going to happen here is that two things are going to happen. The first thing is going to be people are starting to already and will continue to differentiate between real assets and fake assets, right? Real assets would be something that you cannot create more of. Fake assets would be something that you can create unlimited amounts of. And to me, pretty much everything other than Bitcoin, precious metals, and like scarce farmland and oceanfront property, everything other than that, I would consider to be fake. Honestly, if you can create more of it in the world that we're moving into, I consider that to be fake because there's nothing there. So that's the first thing I think is going to happen. But the other thing is that I think people are going to also realize that if you're adding value, you're going to do well. You're going to have options in life if you're adding value. If you're not adding value, you're going to be reliant on whether it's a government, some party of whatever it looks like in the future. There's probably going to be like a UBI, I think. And the people who aren't actually adding value to the world will still get these payments of UBI. Meanwhile, the people who are adding value, holding Bitcoin, storing their value, are going to have options. They're going to be the ones who can buy beef from the rancher. They're going to be the ones who can take trips and vacations and go around the world. I think eventually we get to like a Bitcoin utopia where there's just so much abundance that we don't even know what to do with anymore. It probably won't happen in our lifetime, I don't think anyways. But I think that there's going to be a split there between real and fake assets and people who are adding value and people who aren't adding value. That's how I kind of see this next, I don't know how long playing out.
So,
but
I have a question about the UBI thing, because I've thought about this as well. To me, if there's a central organization that's distributing some sort of UBI, it wouldn't make sense for them to provide something that actually has real cost of production and acquisition like Bitcoin. They would probably give out some sort of like Fed credit.
Yeah, 100%.
And then that would be restricted. And obviously, like, nobody would really want those Fed credits in exchange for Bitcoin. So you wouldn't be able to like trade those for actual money.
Exactly.
But you could go and get your Fed bread and your Fed eggs. Like, you could use it at certain
seed oils.
Yeah, seed oils. Which, obviously not ideal for the people that have to do that, but it gives them like sort of maybe a floor to then, it's almost like a welfare system.
Yeah.
I mean,
100%.
Yeah, people talk about UBI as like this crazy socialism thing, but it's like we kind of have that to some degree already with welfare. I don't know.
Well,
I just
play it out
wonder-
even further.
Even minimum wage, no, like even minimum wage, the way that things are working right now, some of these jobs are being paid minimum wage when they're probably worth less. And then the companies that the jobs that are worth less, they don't even exist.
minimum
There's
wage is,
minimum wage.
yeah, minimum wage is another one of those metrics that's skewed. Why is there a minimum wage?
Exactly.
If work should be valued at less than that, then it should be. And if somebody's willing to do that work for less than that, then what's the problem? Those are two willing participants. So work should just be valued at what people are willing to pay somebody to do that work for. Minimum wage is totally just the stupidest idea in the world. Like, it's total manipulation, another manipulative metric.
Yeah, because it's the same kind of thing. It's not a free market, right? If you're forced to pay your employees X amount, that's usually how businesses go. It's just a whole cycle of fiat nonsense. We don't need to get too far into it. But
It's so
the
crazy how like the last little bit of conversation that we had nothing to really do with Bitcoin. It was just us
yeah,
talking about the legacy system, but it was so valuable to Bitcoiners because I mean Bitcoiners are trying to learn about literally everything.
well, I mean, the main takeaway there would be hold real from my perspective, anyways. Hold real assets, sell all your fake stuff for real stuff, and add value.
Yeah.
Then you
That's it.
can't lose. Then you're not going to be reliant on the government. And if you think about this UBI thing playing out even further, like this is how I see it. If you drive through a city right now, how many for lease signs are out there? How many huge commercial buildings like TD Bank and Bank of Montreal? They're not going to be around in a decade unless they like make some really quick changes here because they're so slow to adapt to things. I think they're going to get left behind. And so you have all these vacant buildings in the cities right now. Yet you have people living in tents by the river. Like, what sense does that make? At least give these people a roof over their head and a bed to sleep in. And I feel like we have more than enough buildings already. We don't have to expand anything. We have the resources already that aren't being utilized today and won't be in the future. So I think that between the UBI, like finding housing from old buildings or not even old, but like vacant buildings, that's kind of how I see it anyways. I hope.
When I look at like real estate right now, I actually think a lot less of it is being driven by retail, like the inflated prices. It's because there's a huge amount of like institutions and investors that are into this, and they're actually trading those assets, those real estate assets, back and forth, and that's keeping the price elevated. But that's like a whole like house of cards. Like as soon as they find somebody of retail to dump one of those real estate projects on, they'll move on to something else, and that something else will eventually become Bitcoin. So in my opinion, like real estate is going to get worse and worse, and like office buildings and the commercial properties are like a prime example of like there's very little retail involved in that. It's all institutions trading that back and forth.
I find it crazy that so many people still think that real estate is scarce, even though so many houses are abundant. They're just empty. I think so. I always talk about this stat: 10% of houses in the U.S. are unoccupied. So if those 10% came to the market, I'm sure a lot of the people who own those houses are borrowing against them. Maybe they have some kind of loan against them. Maybe they just want to hold them because they think that they'll go up in price over time. Maybe they're just in the family for so long that they just want to continue to keep them. If all of that property went on the market, what would happen to the price of housing?
It would drop like crazy. It's just supply
Like
and
a rock.
demand, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Even like right now, how many houses do you see that are on sale? Probably maybe 1 in 20, 1 in 50. No, not even 1 in 20, maybe like 1 in 100.
On sale or for sale?
For sale,
They're
sorry.
definitely not on sale.
For sale, yeah, for sale. So yeah, like available to be bought. Like they have a sign in front of them. Probably like not even 1 in 100, probably like 1 in 200, 1 in 300. The number is very, very low.
Mhm.
So if that goes to 1 in 10, then what happens?
Yeah, what you're pointing at is that it's actually a very illiquid market. So
Yes.
if more liquidity comes into the market rapidly, because there's such a thin spread there's such a thin liquidity, that's going to drastically change the market. I mean, that's what happened in 2008, right? Like there were a lot of people that just kept their houses in 2008. They weren't affected by it. They kept their job, all this, but just on the margin, there was a large amount compared to what was already existing within that market. And that just shifted everything. And that shifted everything for the people that owned their houses and kept their houses because it lowered the value of those homes and they felt poorer, which meant that they spent less or they didn't dip into the equity of their home or they weren't able to because the value of it went down. It had all these cascading effects. But in the grand scheme of the entire housing market, the amount of listed homes and foreclosed homes percentage wise was actually relatively low, but it had this huge drastic effect not only on the housing market but the real economy, the stock market, all sorts of different things. It's really really fragile. A lot more fragile than people think.
Yeah, no doubt.
David Goliath said regarding minimum wage, many people do need to be paid more than their labor is worth. Otherwise, they starve. So minimum wage can make sense in particular situations. But if it makes sense in particular situations, and who would decide what those situations are? And why is it that it makes sense in one situation, but then not in another situation? Why is it that if minimum wage goes up, let's say, for example, if minimum wage goes up 30%, why is it that if I'm working a job where I'm not getting minimum wage, I'm getting more than minimum wage? Why is it that my wage won't go up 20%? Why am I subsidizing the wage for someone else? I think those questions have to be answered. This is a comment from David Goliath Slayer. Um, the thing about minimum wage is that you don't know who decides it. The only reason why it's even there is because the fiat currency financial system is constantly losing value. I actually think that minimum wage is almost like a barrier to entry to starting a business.
Yeah,
It's
it is.
it's like a way to stop you from starting a business, to make it to make it so that the opportunity cost of starting a business is much higher. So let's say you're making $40,000 minimum wage. If your business makes less than $40,000, then you would have been better off earning minimum wage, right?
And so the other thing here too is just what you said, right? If there's a barrier to entry to starting a business and to hiring somebody because of minimum wage, then what does that equal? That equals less jobs. That
Yeah.
equals less employment, less hours of people being able to work. That's the consequence of minimum wage. And it's not like if there was no minimum wage, people would just be paying people $1 an hour, right? Because nobody would accept that.
Yeah.
It would just, the market would just find what would be the new minimum wage. It would
Yes,
be
exactly.
variable. It would be flexible, but people would eventually, it would eventually sort of just find its own equilibrium. Just doesn't make sense that we need a central planner to dictate what a minimum wage is, because all
Yeah.
that is doing is restricting what types of businesses are possible.
It actually reduces the number of companies that can hire as well, right? Because
100%.
if fewer people are starting businesses, then they have fewer people to hire, fewer jobs are available. But then if, let's say, for example, on a Bitcoin standard, even if there is no minimum wage, it's like it goes back to that principle of setting your own wage, right? So if you, let's say, for example, you're getting $1 today in terms of Bitcoin, you're getting paid $1 worth of Bitcoin today. If you hold on to it, at some point it'll be worth $10, then it'll be worth $100. It'll keep going up, meaning that your purchasing power rises. So if you can create value today, and $1's worth of value is all you can create, you can exchange it into Bitcoin, and that's what you have. If you can save it for the future, then you're better off. If you save dollars, you're worse off no matter what. So while minimum wage is going up, people's savings are decreasing. The people who are making minimum wage, it's not like they have tons of savings already, right? If they had tons of savings, then they wouldn't need minimum wage to go up. Is as minimum wage in the current system, as your wage goes up, your savings decrease because it's only the nominal value that's going up. It's not the real value. The real value is actually going down, and it's going down, and it's going to keep going down forever. With Bitcoin, it's
Mhm.
different. With Bitcoin, if you have a minimum wage, it'll have to decrease over time because the purchasing power of that minimum wage is going to increase over time. So I think we spoke about this before. On a Bitcoin standard, companies have to negotiate with employees to decrease their wage,
Yeah.
while in a fiat standard, employees have to negotiate with their company to increase their wage. Because over time, the purchasing power of whatever you earn is going to keep decreasing. If you keep adding value, let's say you add 10% more value today compared to yesterday, and your wage only goes up by 2%, you're creating 8% more value for no reason.
And the company's benefiting from that value that
Yes.
you're creating. You're not. Um, which there's already a lot there as a employee. You have, like, an employer basically has to convince you that you can't do what they're doing. They have to convince you that you can't start your own business and become your own boss and make as
Yes.
much money as me. You have to work for me instead. So there's already that going on. But I think, there's different positions that different people want to do, because not everybody wants to do that, of course. But I think that's such a mind shift to recognize that on a Bitcoin standard, that the employee has a lot more power over their wage, not just in their ability to save and then spend that Bitcoin in the future and have an effective higher wage, but because the value of what they're being paid in is going up. So it's costing more for the employer to hire you, and therefore they need to try to negotiate. And then it's up to you to accept that or not, basically.
Yeah, like in a free market, you wouldn't need to say, hey, you have to pay this person X amount to do a job here. If the job is only worth $5 an hour, then if somebody wants to make $5 an hour, they can come do that job. If they don't value that $5, if they think that they're worth more than that, then they won't go get that job. And if nobody's applying for these jobs at a $5 per hour or $10 per hour position, then the employer is forced by the free market to raise the price of paying employees. That's a free market. It should never be up to anybody else to decide what a business owner has to pay an employee ever. It just doesn't make any sense.
So guys, I have a question here. So if we understand that minimum wage, sort of setting a minimum wage makes no sense, the free market would just decide, then why is there a minimum wage? Is it just a projection from politicians that say, hey, let's raise the minimum wage, and then everybody says, yeah, more money for everybody? Is that it?
100%.
Like,
it's a big part of it for sure, I think. Yeah. Like when politicians are campaigning and they say, we're for the worker, we're going to increase minimum wage. The average person has no idea what that actually means, how much that hurts businesses, how much, it just doesn't make any sense. So they just see it as like, oh, we're going to get more money. We're going to be better off than we were before. And I think that would be the main point. I think the main reason why it exists is just politicians promising, and then it just never went away, because once it's there, you don't want to be the politician that ends it either, because everybody would lose their minds. Because again, not a whole lot of people actually understand the basics of this. And they would say, well, I don't want this guy. He's cutting minimum wage. Like, we're going to go egg his house or, whatever.
Right. So it would be very unpopular. It's more popular to increase the minimum wage and to set a minimum wage. It's sort of like for the people type an idea, even though it's effectively not. Yeah, that's interesting.
Well, think about it. Like the politician making the promise, he doesn't suffer any consequences from it, right? He's not the business owner that actually has to raise his wages. He just makes these promises, writes it into a law, and then all the business owners suffer for it. Like it's just so screwed up.
Yeah, definitely. He's not getting paid minimum wage. Nowhere close.
Oh God.
So Red General here says increase minimum wage means more money for the government. That's the real aim. I'm not sure I understand that. Do you guys have any thoughts on that?
What was the question, Forrest?
Red General just said here, increase minimum wage means more money for the government. That's the real aim.
Well, it does, because when people are earning more, then they're paying more taxes.
But are they earning more overall? Like, is there more tax receipts from having a minimum wage or not? I kind of feel like there might not be.
If the wage goes up, their income goes up. No. So if their income goes up, they go to the next tax bracket. There's an exemption for what you don't get taxed, like a certain amount, and that goes up by a couple percent per year. Or maybe I don't even think it goes up. Does it go up, Jor?
For what? Sorry.
There's like an exemption of $11,000 where you don't have to pay taxes. Has that stayed the same for a long time?
It goes up, but very, very small amount.
Very small.
It doesn't go up in line with the basement.
Right. So what that means is, as minimum, I kind of agree with Red General. I haven't looked at the numbers with the taxes, right? So as minimum wage goes up, people are still earning more, but it's not like they're getting a better standard of living, but they have to pay more in taxes dollar wise. I guess it also helps governments to dilute our savings more easily. Right. So because if our wages are going up, we can kind of, it's almost like that class warfare where the rich people are getting angry at the poor people for getting a higher minimum wage, and it distracts them from the overall situation where governments are just printing, and instead of blaming governments for printing, we blame the poor people for getting a higher minimum wage. Right?
Yeah. I never really thought about it that way.
Yeah.
Interesting. I don't know, boys. That was from where this conversation started. I don't know how the hell we ended up there, but
that was a really great conversation.
Later. Yeah, that was fun.
Very fun.
It's just fun thinking about these things, because when you're just sitting there by yourself thinking about it, or thinking about it, people who don't necessarily understand Bitcoin. By the way, there's 2,222 people in here right now in the chat. A row of ducks, people. That's a new all-time high for the chat. Wow. But it's cool. It's cool to see the feedback here, interact with people. I see some positive comments, some negative comments. That's okay. That's expected. And just to kind of bounce ideas off each other. I think that this is really cool. So shout out to everybody here right now. You have helped us set an all-time high. I want to give a couple more shout outs here. We're going to, Zapstream's buzzing right now, you guys. Letha's up 10,000 sats, not once, but twice.
Wow.
10,000
nice.
sats times 2 from Letha.
Thanks, Letha.
MIX zapped 5,000 sats over on Zapstream. Orange Mart just zapped 121 sats, and Plunger just zapped 1,000 sats. So that's over in the Zapstream. And we got a couple also from the QR code besides Forest Head here. And one, a row of breasts. 33,333 row of butts or breasts, whatever you want to call them, from Mark. I'm guessing it. There's no note attached, but I'm 99.9% sure that was Mark. So thank you, Mark, for the the row of butts. And we got one more here, 1,111 sats to the Maple Bitcoin Reserve Fund. So that's, you can send those sats right beside Forrest Head there to the QR code if you feel like supporting the channel, what we're doing here. And we also have the address there. If you don't want to, if you're on your phone and you can't scan the QR code, you can also just manually type it in there. That's a good way to support it. And you can also leave a message with your Zap amount there. What else do we want to talk about here, boys? You had another announcement to make, didn't you, Rajat?
Yeah. So the community, so last week we said that we would stop the price. We would increase the price at 50 members. I think we will keep it for a bit for the people who haven't seen it, for the people who haven't joined yet, people who want to. I know there are a lot of people that are following our content regularly. We're going to continue to add a lot of value to this. We're going to keep creating more and more value so that the people who are in it want to actually stay in the group, right? That's our incentive here. That's our motive. And we've kept the price at $21 per month right now. What did we decide? Maybe at the end of the day today?
Yeah.
We change it over?
Or maybe end of the weekend. But yeah, in the next couple of days, it's going to go from 21 to 42.
Give everybody who's watching this ability to get in early still, even though we're beyond the 50.
Yeah. Yeah. So we shared the community link in the chat there. I would highly recommend that you check it out. You can go for the free trial at first. If you need to cancel it at some point, you can. There's no obligation to stay. We actually expect people to leave at some point, because at some point, when you learn about Bitcoin, when you understand it, you don't need to keep absorbing the information, right? So at that point, you can leave. We're not keeping you here. We want you to stay as long as possible, because building a bigger community makes it stronger. It makes it so that we have we're more motivated to create better content for you guys, and we want to keep doing that. So check out the community, join it. Go ahead, George.
One thing I want to mention is Rajat has his own community. He's been doing this before, and he gave me access to it, and I hopped on these calls that you do. You do these weekly calls on your community, and I was just blown away at how much value you were giving. Like, people can actually talk and have these questions. It's just like, it's almost like a consultation or something, but you're just paying this monthly fee, and you're able to join in and get all these questions and answers and listen to other people's questions. I was blown away at how much value you were giving away with those calls. It was crazy, actually. And so I think we should probably, we're still in early days with this Maple Bitcoin school, but I want to do something like that. We've talked about that, maybe a month, once a month, or we'll figure it out. But we're developing a lot of the different courses that we're doing here. And I think we'll have something like that, like a exclusive live stream where people can ask questions, because there's a ton that we miss in here. We're going to grow this thing out like crazy. So there's going to be a lot of value for people long-term, I think, as well in this.
Yeah. And I think it's important to note that even when we raise the price, actually, somebody left a comment in the post that we shared the other day saying, it's kind of like Bitcoin. Everybody gets in at the price they deserve. And I commented back and said, everyone joins the Maple Bitcoin community on the day they deserve. So it's the same kind of thing, right? And as the network grows of Bitcoin, you have to pay a higher price. As we add more value to this community, as it grows, it's worth more. So we charge more. It's not us trying to extract anything. I think $21 is laughable for the content that's in there already, the content that's to come, and then these private sessions that we're going to be doing once a month together. But it's important to note that if you join at this rate, the $21 rate, even when we raise the price, you're still going to be locked in at the $21 forever.
Mhm.
So that's kind of what you're doing here, is just like buying Bitcoin, you lock that price that you bought it in at. It's the exact same kind of thing. So we actually did a video on Wednesday, and we shared it on the Maple Bitcoin, the very first exclusive piece of content that we did for the community on Wednesday, and it was posted on Wednesday as well. And the comment here from Atomic Stag says, Jor, have you had any experiences with the dividends from Misty using the drip method along with purchasing a car or something else? So we actually did a full 1 hour deep dive into this exact question. That was the very first piece of content. We didn't pay Atomic Stag to say this. He actually paid us. But anyways, it worked out well. And that was the first video. So if you are somebody who's looking to, we actually talked about getting a loan from Ledden to buy Misty, and then to a couple options between repaying the loan or buying more Bitcoin, or a hybrid strategy of both those. It was a really, really good video. It was just over an hour long, but it was a really deep dive into this exact question you have here, Atomic Stag.
Yeah, and Rajat made an amazing spreadsheet that actually worked through the numbers and the realistic outcomes of different strategies you could do with borrowing against your Bitcoin, and maybe a yield-bearing instrument, or just buying Bitcoin or paying back the loan, all sorts of different stuff. It's that video is definitely worth signing up for to get access to, I would say.
Yeah, I think that alone, so if you think about it, for some people, they're going to spend $21 on coffees a week, right? They're going to spend $21 on something that's going to probably depreciate over time. It's going to disappear over time. I think this is something that will help you to stay in Bitcoin for longer. And I think this is something that really, I feel like if I had joined a community like this, it would have helped me to start buying a lot sooner. One thing that I wanted to mention was that a lot of the people who joined my community bought Bitcoin a lot sooner than they otherwise would have. So there are people who went from, let's say, a 2% allocation to a 80% allocation with one of those live calls. And what did it cost them? $40 a month, $40 for that call. And now they're going to be making hundreds of thousands of dollars over the next few years. So it's up to you if you want to join or not. But the goal here is to get you guys to pick it up quicker than the billionaires, because we know the billionaires are coming. We know Warren Buffett's coming. We know all these very wealthy people are going to be coming. They're not going to let you have one Bitcoin. They're not going to let you. So in the community, our focus is going to be to get you guys to buy Bitcoin as quickly as possible, as soon as possible, so you actually understand it, because it'll make a difference in your life. At the end of the day, $40, $20. Actually, what are we going to increase the price to? $42 a month?
42, yeah.
So $42 a month. Even at $42, at some point we're going to increase it to $63. Then we're going to increase it to $100, right? So if you're in at $21 a month, that $21 a month is probably going to get you a lot more value than $21.
Oh, that's the hope, right? That's
Yeah.
our goal. We don't want to just provide $21 of value. We want to provide a lot more than that. That's the goal.
What did we say? We're going to add so much value that it wouldn't even make sense for somebody not to join?
To not join, yeah.
To not join. And it's true. And we're just getting started. We did our first video. There's 55 people in there already. And I will say this, when I left my job in 2021, it probably was early 2022. But I didn't have a salary coming in anymore. I had my Bitcoin, I had a little bit more savings, but I wasn't bringing any money in. And so even at that point, I joined a community. It was actually $60 or $60 US per month. And I didn't have $60 per month, but I looked at it as an investment. And it was probably the best decision that I had ever made to get me to where I am today. But it's like, people think they don't have the money, but it's not just another Netflix subscription. This is an investment into whatever you're doing here. You're going to learn about security. You're going to learn about products like Misty and how we think about it, and spreadsheets, and have tools like this and resources, but also just having other people to talk to in there. Like, there's been 200 comments, I think, in the first week already, of just people discussing things and asking questions. And it's like, you can't find that anywhere else. So consider this if you want to, right?
No spam either.
No spam, right?
That's the key here. No spam, no random altcoins being pumped. If we pump an altcoin on that community, I'm telling you that you should leave. We're not going to do that, right? That's our main goal here is to create as much value as possible, and that's what we're doing.
And you get a lot of access, right? Like there's the three of us on there, and you can post a question to the community. There's already great people in there, and us will be answering and talking back and forth and stuff. So,
yeah, consider joining. We're obviously not gonna.
Yeah.
We just want to bring it to light, make sure everybody knows, make sure everybody still has a chance to get in at the $21. It's like, you know, it sounds like an infomercial here, but you can also try a free trial. You can do a 7-day free trial on there. You can see what we got going on. There's already lots of content, and just see what you think. There's zero pressure there. A 7-day free trial, zero pressure there. Nothing to lose. And somebody said they'd rather buy Bitcoin than join the community. That's fine.
Yeah.
It's not for everybody, but it's for a lot of people here, right?
Yeah.
And think about it this way too. If you want to join the community at some point, if you wait until it's $42 a month versus today at $21 a month, then you're going to have an extra, you just created $21 worth of Bitcoin that you could buy sats with every month just by being a little bit proactive here.
Some people are, there was this quote that somebody told me. I was talking to somebody who had his own community, and he's making something like $200,000 from creating value. So he's making $200,000 a year, but he's probably created millions of dollars of value for the people who are in the community. So he said to me, some people are just too cheap to get rich.
That's interesting.
If you want to, I know it's valuable for people to educate themselves. It's valuable to leave the, it's valuable for people to understand things before they can actually start buying them and start dedicating time to them.
Mm-hmm.
And there are only like a couple of questions that you might have that are stopping you. So I've actually had people who they asked, so they booked a meeting with me, a 15-minute meeting with me. They asked me one question. They ended it in like 10 minutes rather than taking the whole 15 minutes. And that's all they had to ask me. And they were on board. And they wanted to just go and buy as much Bitcoin as they can after asking that one question, because of the way that I mean, it's up to you. It's up to you how you want to do it. If you want to go and buy the Bitcoin, that's perfectly fine. But I guarantee you that the value that we're going to provide is going to be worth way more than the value that we provide is going to appreciate in terms of Bitcoin. Everything else depreciates in terms of Bitcoin. The value we're going to provide is going to appreciate in terms of Bitcoin.
We're going to outperform the hurdle rate of Bitcoin with our value.
Exactly.
No, for real though, like there's just so much stuff to know in Bitcoin. And especially if you're somebody, you know, who's just getting into it, you got a bit of Bitcoin, you're not really sure where to go. It's so important to have just other people that you can talk to about this stuff with, right? Like it's different than joining a Telegram group with no friction there, no monthly fee, because there's just a bunch of idiots in there, a bunch of scammers, honestly. But like here, the nice thing about this, because I've been doing the Living the Future for just over a year now, but the nice thing is when somebody asks a question, and if somebody asks or answers in a rude way or a wrong way or just like outright spammy, they get called out, right? When you have a filter like that, the hurdle rate here being $21 a month, you know, you're not going to see that. You're going to have, you can ask a question in a safe and private space, and you're going to get answered. And if somebody tries to mislead you, we're going to call them out on it. And it's like proof of work, but it's also like, I was trying to think of something else term in Bitcoin, but it doesn't matter. It's a good idea. It's well worth your time.
Yep.
So yeah, that's the second part of our little break here, commercial break. We got a lot of freaking questions here, boys. Do you guys have anything else you want to share about anything?
I wanted to say actually for the questions, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you there, but I wanted to say for the questions, if you ask your questions in the group, we're probably going to start giving more priority to them. So that'll be another way for us to add value to the people in the community.
Absolutely.
Yep. And you know, don't just take our word for it. Join, do the free trial. If you don't like it, if you think we're lying, then leave. Right? There's no 1-year commitment here. So it's a 1 month kind of thing. So
month to month.
Okay, month to month, exactly. Big shout out to somebody who sent in 1,117 sats to our QR code there beside Forrest's head and said, "Keep up the good work, Maple Bitcoin." Thank you.
Wow. Thank you. Appreciate that.
So Nav with $10 super chat. Thank you, Nav. And by the way, thanks. I don't think I said thanks to Atomic Stag there for the last one, $5 super chat. Nav says, Want to start a business, but stacking seems like the better idea. Business might not be profitable for a while and it's risky. By the time you're profitable, you might only get the same amount of sats.
So I would say the thing is here is um, starting a business, running a business has additional benefits than just stacking Bitcoin. Like then you get to work in something that you want to work in. If you just stack sats, well, that being said, if you just stack sats now and forgo a little bit of gratification in the present, you could have more options in the future to start a business then or something like that because you have more capital behind you. So there is, I don't know, there's almost in my eyes when I just read this off the bat, there's sort of like maybe a hybrid solution where you could put in more sweat equity and less capital, maybe if there's some way to do that.
Yeah.
And then be able to sort of stack more sats or stack a degree of more sats compared to if you were to just go all in on your business right away.
I think more than no, go ahead.
I was just going to say, that's what I was going to say on top of that is like, if you think about the businesses that are being started right now and the businesses that are being created, I think about Tether in this case, where they have like 30 employees, they're making billions of dollars every month in profits. Like you shouldn't be getting into a venture right now, in my opinion, if you're going to be losing money for a couple of years. I think that that's an outdated way of thinking about this. I think and Bitcoin's a really good like comparison here, right? Like if you're entering into a venture that you think is going to be like 2 or 3 years to start turning a profit, I would say don't do that thing. Because you can start a business very efficiently at this time, regardless of what it is. I mean, if it's different, if it requires a huge capital investment, but at the same time, that's a little bit different because that's an actual investment. That's not you just burning through cash. So I think that you should really take a look at like your expectations. How much money was this going to create in this year, next year, and 10 years? And if you are losing money right now, I would probably forego that. Honestly, I would rather keep my job for another year, buy Bitcoin, and then just, see what happens with it. But I wouldn't enter into a venture right now if you plan on losing money.
I think that it's more than, I think I have a little bit of a different opinion than you guys. I think starting a business is more than just about the money. It's about the freedom. It's about the fact that you don't have to work with a manager, a boss, right? You do whatever you want to all day. It's also, I mean, maybe this is something that most people won't agree with on this chat, but it's almost like a hedge where if something does happen to Bitcoin, you still have something where you can create value to get whatever the future is, right? If you don't know what you don't know, what if Bitcoin fails? At some point, let's say you learn the skills of becoming a plumber, for example, you can provide plumbing skills for another currency, right? If the US dollar survives and Bitcoin dies, you can continue to earn US dollars for your plumbing services. Or if we go to a gold standard, or if we go to an XRP standard, and the world is absolutely crazy, right? You could sell your plumbing skills for XRP, right? Whatever you want to sell it for. I think that's the hedge there, right? Because while I do think that Bitcoin is going to survive forever, a business is more than just about money.
It's that's such a good point.
Yeah.
Right. It's about freedom. It's about being able to do what you want. It's about being able to go to the grocery store on a Wednesday at 12 p.m. instead of having to go at 7:30 when everybody else is there. Right. It's about being able to work when you want to, how you want to, and not having to rely on a paycheck.
That's truly invaluable in my opinion. Freedom.
Yeah.
Having the freedom to do it. And, I went through I wouldn't say tough. It was pretty tough though, between a lot of things going on in my life. But, I went through a tough phase where like, I just, I was so used to having a manager and somebody telling me what to do all day. I had a hard time like keeping myself accountable. It's a skill to learn for sure. But like once I kind of figured it out, and I'm still learning obviously, but just exactly what Rajat was saying there is like, you can literally do whatever you want. It's not that you work less. It's just, you can kind of design your life around what you want to do, not what you have to be doing at this time. And there's so much you can do now with technology and AI to actually take a lot of that off of your plate. And just having the ability to go to the grocery store or go for a round of golf with your dad, or to go visit your brother that you haven't seen for a while and you just want to do it. You can't do that if you're answering to somebody else. And you cannot put a price on that, in my opinion.
Not having to ask for permission to go on vacations is crazy.
Oh,
Most people can't even think about. They can't even put that in. Like if I wanted to go to Vegas for the conference, no way.
Yeah.
I'd have to take vacation days, right?
it's
Like
rough.
I'd have to ask somebody if I can go.
Or a
It's
sick
like
day. Remember those?
or
For that?
sick days, right? Or like it's like you're in elementary school again. Like, oh, hey teacher, can I have permission to go here? Or can I have permission to go to the washroom? No, I don't want to do that. That's what starting a business is about. In the beginning, it's much more difficult, and you may not get as much Bitcoin. But over time, as the compounding starts, you're not going to regret it.
The way I look at it is it's very challenging to start a business, but it's also very challenging to work for somebody else. So just
Yes.
pick the challenge that you would prefer. And there's a lot more reward for doing your own thing. You
Or do
can
both.
leverage yeah, to some degree,
Yeah.
but I mean you can leverage a lot more. I'm not talking financial leverage, I'm talking about time leverage and work leverage when you create your own business.
Yeah,
You
you
can
can
create
literally.
you can create intellectual property.
Yes.
You can hire people to do work for you and be the facilitator and the manager, and then you're profiting from a part of their effort as well for orchestrating the entire system. There's a lot of leverage that you can get in with a business that you cannot as an employee.
Yeah, and you can set your own wage, right? You can do things the way that you want to. You can assign value to what you're providing, right? If you think that what you're providing isn't being paid enough, that you're not getting paid enough for what you're providing, you can raise your prices. You have nobody to blame. If you feel like the value that you're providing is worth way more to the customer, then you can charge whatever you want to. So in the beginning, you might feel like, okay, I'm making $50 an hour here or $30 an hour at my job, and I can buy this much Bitcoin. But with your business, maybe you're going to be making $300 an hour, and you can buy 10 times the Bitcoin. So even if Bitcoin, and I mean, in that time, let's say Bitcoin 5x's, and you've 10x your income, you're now able to buy double the Bitcoin. Right. So that's what got me to really keep going and pushing. I've had moments where I wanted to leave this. I've wanted to start a job. I'm not even exaggerating here. There were points where I was actually applying. I have messages with Swan Bitcoin. I messaged Swan Bitcoin. They didn't reply to me, thank God. But I asked them for a job, and I guess they didn't see the message. But at that point, I was so down because of this, right? At the time, it felt like, oh, maybe I should have just kept my job. I would have been able to get way more Bitcoin. I would have been way better off. But I wouldn't have studied Bitcoin if I had a job the way that I did, right? I
Dude,
wouldn't have understood it at the depth that I do.
when I started this business, I was making so little money at it. This Bitcoin not crypto, my show, and I applied at Bitcoin Well, I applied at ShakePay, I applied at Liquid, I applied at all these different Bitcoin companies that I genuinely like, but none of them really wanted me to work for them. So here I am
But
doing
like
my own thing.
that's the worst case though. That's what people have to like keep in mind here is like, if you are somebody who wants to leave their job, if whatever we're talking about right now is kind of resonating with you, you can just do it. And again, you can start it. And if it fails, then you can apply for a job at Swan Bitcoin or Bitcoin Well. If they don't hire you, you can just go back to the job or do whatever you were working on before. Like that's it. Nobody's going to die here. There's not that big of risk. If the worst thing that happens is you go back to where you are today, that's not a huge risk, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And that's why having Bitcoin as a reserve and storing your time and energy in Bitcoin is such a superpower, because you can actually afford to do that now. That's the only reason I was able to leave my job, is because I had Bitcoin as that insurance policy, knowing that it was there, knowing how much I valued it, and knowing how much I did not want to sell any of it. And therefore I just worked my ass off just until, Alex Harmozy says, do it in so much value or volume that it would be impossible to fail. And just keep doing that. Like as much volume as it would be impossible to fail. Like that's what you have to do. It's not an easy thing. It's like starting your own business is it's not an easier route. It's probably a much harder route, but it's worth it to me.
Yeah.
Good question though.
Nav had a follow-up question. I don't know if we want to just quickly address
Yep.
that one. $5 super chat.
Big shout out to Paul here though too. Paul sent in $10. Great show today. Thank you, Paul. Very much.
Thanks, Paul.
$10 chat there. And Nav says business won't give you a freedom. Business won't give you freedom for a while, and only if you're successful. Most businesses fail.
Well, yeah, anything that's worth having is going to take a lot of time, right? It's not like you're going to get, let's say, for example, if you start a YouTube channel, you're not going to get really good at making YouTube videos right away. It's going to take you time. It took me 4 years to get to the point where I am today. I started posting in May of 2021 on Instagram. And even that, it took a lot of time and energy to get me to do that, right? To just have the idea that, okay, I'm going to start posting content. Before that, I had never thought I would be posting on YouTube. Never thought of, I didn't even have the Instagram app downloaded on my phone. I deleted it. So it takes time. Everything worth having is going to take time. Even let's say, for example, if you want to build a fit body, it's going to take you years. You go there, you do it for a day, 2 days, 5 days, you look in the mirror, you're not going to see anything. But let's say a year from now, you're not even going to recognize yourself. Is that worth it? Is it worth it to put in that time to better yourself? I think it is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's interesting. And I think that people should not only be thinking about this as like a, making money kind of thing, but I do think that people, regardless of whatever it is that you're interested in, I think that you should actually be talking about it online. And the reason I said is not necessarily to make money. That might be a goal of yours. That might be like the end goal of it, but that shouldn't be the whole thing there. Just think about this aspect of it. If I didn't start making videos on YouTube one day, if I decided that, I'm just going to make blogs, I'm going to, put up ads in my local area. If I didn't take the first step of just making a video and then another one and then another one online and talking about what I wanted to and didn't really tried my best not to care what other people thought, I wouldn't be sitting here today. I never would have met Rajat. I never would have met Forrest. And just think about how many people are out there in the world who you can relate to, you resonate with, and you're on the same kind of frequency with. And the only way that you're going to find those people are by sharing your thoughts about this kind of stuff. And I think that whether it's a YouTube channel, a blog, an Instagram account, anything, that's like your new resume, not just for your future employee, but like for the future people that you want to be working with and collaborating with and meeting. So you're never going to meet people. You're never going to grow and get further ahead if you're just kind of waiting for something to happen.
Can I show you guys something cool just based on what we were talking about there?
Mm-hmm.
So Jor, you mentioned you should talk about anything, like whatever you can, whatever you feel would be valuable to people, right? People have podcasts talking about the show Friends. Other people have podcasts talking about like Harry Potter, right? So this is a channel that I came across. I'm a huge fan of Breaking Bad. And
I love that show.
It's amazing. It's so good.
So good.
What this guy does is he actually just twists every single scenario. So let's say, for example, what if Jesse Pinkman had to kill Crazy 8? I don't know if you guys remember.
Oh, interesting.
But it's so cool. What if Breaking Bad ended up in a Granite State, or ended at Granite State? I don't know what that is, but maybe I need to watch it again. But I feel like there's so many cool different ideas that people come up with, and you don't know what could blow up, right? Like the most popular video from this guy is all the time Hank could have caught Walter White in Breaking Bad. It's just,
there's a billion of those moments in the show. I feel like Hank should have known.
Exactly, right? So all this guy is doing is he's talking about something that we're thinking anyways.
Yeah.
It's just confirmation bias. People have fun listening to other people talk about things that they like, right? So you can literally talk about anything. Most businesses do fail, and of course they do because most people aren't consistent.
Yeah. It's true.
Good discussion there, boys. Holy cow.
Great discussion.
We're 1 hour and a half in here. What are you guys thinking for a timeline? We haven't addressed really any questions outside the super chats today.
Yeah.
Are there any super chats that we haven't answered?
Well, we got one early on here. I don't know what.
I don't even know what it says. I don't really understand it, to be honest.
Oh yeah, I don't know what that is.
We got 1,000. What is that? Rupees?
I think that's
maybe. Yeah.
The poor boy's saying over and out, we just bombed little USA on his deathbed. What a sad day to start paying for your foundational sins. Man,
all right.
Well, thank you for the super chat. We read it.
Thank you for the super chat.
So
I like
no.
this question from Masculine Excellence. It's the second one.
Okay.
Great video, guys. Let's assume somebody has 100K over over 100K in savings. With everything you guys know, would you drop it all in Bitcoin this year and make it 500 to a million by 2030? If this is your question, then I don't think you should be buying Bitcoin. And the reason for that is, if you're asking us this, then you haven't done the research yourself. You haven't come to the conclusion yourself. If you think that Bitcoin is guaranteed to go to 500K to a million by 2030, then you don't understand Bitcoin, because anything can happen, right? So if you have 100K in savings today, you have to understand that Bitcoin's price could move sideways for 10 years. The likelihood of that is very, very low, of course. I'm not saying that's going to happen, but it could. And if Bitcoin doesn't hit 500K to a million, then you're going to be very disappointed. So if you're asking this question, I think there's a little bit more education on your end. I would personally say that yes, it would be a smart thing to do, but you're not guaranteed that 500K to a million. No way. You're not guaranteed that. For all we know, Satoshi Nakamoto could dump all their coins in that time. For all we know, BlackRock says we're not going to have the Bitcoin ETF. The price might not reflect what you want, but the fundamentals stay the same. That's the key. You have to understand the fundamentals. If you're looking at it from how much dollars you can make, you're not going to have a good time.
Yo, did you guys see the side note? Did you see that the BlackRock ETF is pulling in more fees for BlackRock than their S&P 500 ETF?
Wow. I didn't know that.
Crazy.
Wow.
Yeah. So anyway, what I would do with this is I would dollar cost average just for my mental state, so that I wouldn't just smash buy and see the price go down. But I do agree with Rajat that nothing is guaranteed, that you do need to grow your conviction, but that's part of dollar cost averaging, is that over time you see that the value is likely going to be going up, and it's literally taking you days and days or weeks or months and years to dollar cost average in, and during that time you're going to get more and more interested and educated on the investment that you're making, or the what Bitcoin is basically, and then you're likely, those dollar cost averages will end up being probably bigger and bigger. So that's just how I would go about it, and yeah, that's all I really have to say about that one, I think.
Yeah.
Boys, we had 4 new people join the school community since we announced that.
Nice.
Wow.
So that's great. Forrest, I would actually disagree there with you. I don't like, if you got a lump sum of cash right now, I think that, again, this is just my prediction. This is not like going to happen for sure, but I think this next 12 months is going to be, if you're DCAing, you're going to leave a lot of sats on the table. But at the same time, I do think that what you should do, what I would do in this case for masculine excellence here, I would put that into Bitcoin. I would take a longer time frame. You got 2030 here. I would push that out to like 2035. Don't do anything with that Bitcoin for like 10 years, because it might go up, it might go down, but at the end of it, you're going to be so much better off with the conviction that you have. You're going to know what you're holding. You're probably not going to sell that Bitcoin ever. You might have that idea in your head right now that you're going to cash this thing in 2030 for fiat and make a big profit. You spend those years in Bitcoin and learning about Bitcoin, you're not going to sell that Bitcoin. So I would lump sum it in, but then take like a percentage, a reasonable percentage of your salary or your income every month and DCA with that. But I like the strategy of lump summing first and DCAing later.
On a technical aspect, you are correct that lump sum is way better, because you're buying with DCA, you're buying an asset that's appreciating over time. So you're just getting less of it because the price is going up. So you're 100% right. I just think DCA is a way to like emotionally handle it
for sure,
a little bit better for the vast majority of people. And I DCA'd into my Bitcoin position, and it's even, so it's something I recommended, and it's still like I would have been way better of just smash buying because of the price of when I started my DCA.
And that's what I was going to say for us, is like, to me, DCAing, if you're DCAing and you have money sitting on the sidelines and the price is going up and up and up, that's more stressful to me. Of like having to always check and be like, oh man, I missed out on, I should have bought. You won't have any regrets if you just lump sum into it versus DCA. But let's say that you're DCAing and all of a sudden Bitcoin goes from 100 to 200 to 300 and you still have 80K sitting on the sidelines here. You're going to regret that probably for the rest of your life.
But I mean, okay, so but you sold your rental and bought Bitcoin at near a high, and you probably weren't feeling great as it was going down because you were like, "Oh, I could have bought more if I had held on to a bit of that."
True.
So I don't know. It's really again, we're kind of predicting of what the market's going to do.
Yeah.
Right. So I think on average, I mean, we had on average throughout history of Bitcoin, we've had 3 up years, 1 down year. So there's 3 times more likely that lump summing is going to be better on a yearly basis in that sense. So I think you're right probably in that way. But again, I don't know. You could it could be emotionally damaging either strategy actually.
But to me, like I know what you're saying there, but I wasn't like emotionally damaged by it. I was like kind of mad at myself a little bit because whenever you buy at the top, you're going to be a little bit of regret there. But I never sold it. I was never like down about. I never got mad at Bitcoin. I never, But I feel like if you missed it, if you had a bunch of money sitting on the sideline and it was that 1 week where it just skyrocketed, I feel like that would be a slightly different sense of regret than like buying it at the top. I don't know.
I don't. I felt the same way doing the DCA strategy as what you just described. So yeah, I think it's maybe just about temperament and stuff too. But
yeah, probably. What do
I
you
think either way, no matter what this guy does, great job on having 100K in savings.
Yeah, no doubt.
That's crazy. Most people can't get to that point. Like if you delay gratification to that point, think about how many things you probably missed out on. You probably missed out on having a nicer car. I mean, unless you're just creating so much value that you're constantly getting this much money. But having 100K in savings on its own is that's huge.
But even if he's adding that much value, that's definitely worth applauding.
Yeah, and whatever you do, you gotta make that decision for yourself. Mainly just because nobody really knows what's going to happen. You're the only one who's going to be dealing with the consequences of your decision. I would personally go lump sum, but I see what you were saying there about the dollar cost average, Forrest.
Yeah. I see both sides of it too. So it's kind of the nice thing about this discussion is that you saw both sides of it, and you can decide for yourself which side of it you would have more regret on, buying 100%. The top or missing the run up.
Absolutely.
Check out Nav's comment there.
Yeah, I was laughing at
that. Man, Nav's throwing some dollars around today. That's like the 5th super chat there. Thank you, Nav. For anybody listening on audio on Spotify, big shout out to anybody listening to the podcast. These are all available on Spotify, by the way. Forrest has been uploading the videos and streams to Spotify. But Nav says he should change his name to Feminine Excellence if he doesn't full port into Bitcoin.
That's really funny.
We got another super chat here, boys. The Bucks LFG4, $5. Thank you, Bucks. Happy 4th, gents. We print $5 trillion out of the thin air starting in 30 minutes. The future is bright. How do we repay $40 trillion? No doubt.
Wait, so what does this person mean in 30 minutes?
Well, it's not accurate. I mean, he's talking about how the big beautiful bill has been signed, and so there's I think 4 trillion of spending in there. Sorry, of the debt. Yeah, 3 point. Yeah, something like that. The debt ceiling is being raised by that amount, which assumes that they're going to be spending into that.
Oh, I thought they meant that they're literally going to start, they're going to start something that they said on the bill in 30 minutes. They're going to start printing money but then isn't that crazy though? They're going to print it over time. Of course, it's going to take them like a couple of years to print it. But no matter what you do, no matter what your family does, no matter what your entire neighborhood does, they're probably not going to earn $5 trillion in the next 500 years.
That's what Trump has said, is that their plan is not to be fiscally responsible, but to actually grow out of this problem. They've basically said it's not possible to be fiscally responsible, which is ridiculous. I mean, government in general, ridiculous. You
can't turn it around though. That's the whole thing here for me, is like, why not just go in? Just like, why not make it 6 trillion or 9 trillion? Like, just as long as people are still willing to accept your fake dollars, you can buy things with those, print as much as you want of them. You cannot fix this problem right now. $40 trillion is never going to be repaid for billions of years, probably. So just like accelerate it.
It's true.
Yeah,
true.
yeah, and yeah. So there we go. That's kind of the answer. How do we repay 40 trillion? They never do. They just devalue what 40 trillion means. That's the real answer to getting rid of debt, is just debasing the currency until 40 trillion is nothing. And by then the debt will be 100, 200, 300 trillion.
And the shitty thing is the people who are going to pay the most for this are the people who don't have assets right now. That's why we're doing this show. That's why we work every single day to try to get the average people into Bitcoin, because as they print money, the people with assets, with wealth, those assets are also going to be inflated with it. So they're not even going to really notice anything. They're going to net out, right? They print a bunch of money, housing value goes up. Whoever's holding houses, their net worth goes up. People who don't have a house, people who don't have savings, people don't have stocks in the S&P 500, they're the ones, their life gets more expensive because they're not holding any of these assets that are going up at the same rate.
Yeah.
And
so
the only reason I'm against the accelerationism that you guys were mentioning there is just that it really affects the people that don't have assets. It just hurts them really quickly. I mean, I'm for the acceleration because it really wakes people up, but I'm against it. And so without it, it's kind of this slow grind where people think, oh, why is everything getting expensive? Whatever, they blame this and that. So then they don't wake up, and maybe it's actually maybe more extractive. So, maybe I just convinced myself on the case of acceleration as well. Because over time, I think they can extract more doing this sort of slow bleed that they're doing with people.
I think most people don't quite understand why owning real estate is even so profitable. Of course, there's the fact that you can sell the real estate and you get the cash flow. But even more than that, I think it's more valuable that people can borrow as much as they want against the real estate at a low interest rate as well. And that's what the Cantillon effect is, right? So the closer you are to the money printer, the better rates you get. So let's say if the person who owns a house, they go to a bank, they can get a HELOC at like 5, 6, 7%. Right. But if you don't have real estate and you're poor, you're either going to borrow with a credit card, which you're very likely not even going to get in the first place. So you can't borrow with a credit card. If you do borrow with a credit card, it'll be like 20%. But then if you can't borrow with a credit card, you're going to go to a what's it called? Those
money market.
Money marks. Yeah. One of those things. Yeah.
Or
payday loans.
Payday loans.
Yeah. You're going to go to those and they're going to charge you like 600%. So if you're in a tight situation and you don't have Bitcoin, what are you going to do? What are you going to borrow against? But if you have Bitcoin, it changes things. Anyone can own Bitcoin. We were talking about this last time, where anyone can own Bitcoin. If you need to borrow, you can, and they'll give you the loan within a day, 2 days. Of course, it's a loan, right? It's leverage. It's borrowing. Things could go wrong. But the point here is that now you don't have to rely on the money mart to borrow money. You don't have to borrow. You don't have to do a cash advance on your credit card. If you're being responsible, let's say you need to buy a car, for example, your bank might give you a loan at 18%. The dealership might give you a loan at 23%, but you can borrow against your Bitcoin at 13%, 12.9%, right? That changes everything. It changes everything. It gives people the opportunities that they may never have had before.
Yeah, it's kind of cool. Like we were doing our masterclass on the Maple Bitcoin School community the other day, talking about lead and what Rajat was just referring to there, where you can get a loan against your Bitcoin for 12.9%. And I asked him in the video, I was like, do they like do a credit check on you? And it's like, no, they don't need to, because you have this asset that they have custody of, obviously, but that's the main drawback of this. But you don't need to have a credit score if you're holding Bitcoin. That is your credit score.
Yeah, Bitcoin is your credit.
Bitcoin is your credit score.
Yeah. Crazy.
So I love this comment here too by some Gabe says, that's why I stopped paying more than the minimum on my debt. It's time to accumulate assets as fast as possible and watch it appreciate. Absolutely. Yeah. That's why when people say like, should I pay off my mortgage or buy Bitcoin? It's like, buy Bitcoin every single time. You have a fixed long-term, very low rate debt instrument there that you're choosing to pay off. That's your outflow for the month. If you're holding Bitcoin instead, you got about 50, 60, 70% compounding annually. That's a huge spread. It's not even a question.
I think the only caveat with that is that you want to manage debt responsibly so that you don't end up being a forced seller of that asset. at a distressed time. Like,
Right.
you know, all the bear markets actually, for the most part with Bitcoin, are leverage driven. So it's unwinding of leverage, and it cascades and affects all these different aspects. And then different institutions will blow up and have to spit the Bitcoin back into the market, which unwinds additional leverage. So there's a huge amount of I mean, you can go on Binance and MX or MXC or whatever and get like 100 times leverage on Bitcoin through a trading perp, and it's like, that's insane, right? I mean, we're not talking about that, but I would just advise people to not get over leveraged.
Right.
You know, be responsible with that.
Yeah, the video that we did on the school community, I don't mean to promote it too much here, but it's really good. There's a lot of things to think through with it. It's like, what could happen? How could you be liquidated with it? How you should manage that? What you should be thinking about? You know, how to prepare for that and have some, you know, USDC or Bitcoin somewhere else. So we talked about this whole thing. If you are planning on taking on some debt, somebody said that they took a loan against their Bitcoin using Ledn just to try it. I think it's a good idea. You know, you can get I think, what's the minimum forest on it?
$1,000 US worth, and then
Right.
you get half of that back in a loan.
Just try it. And that was kind of one of the main points of the discussion we had, is like, we're not telling you to do this. We're telling you to get familiar with the process of this. Because if you're a Bitcoiner now, these are the kind of tools and things that you're going to be able to leverage in the future. I still think that 12% is very high for like the best collateral that's ever existed before, but that's where we are today. So I can't shortcut that myself.
It'll only go down from here. The rates will only go down from here.
Yeah.
At some point, because these are the least risky loans that a bank can give you, right? If anything happens, let's say, for example, if they lend you money, they can sell your Bitcoin. If the price of the Bitcoin goes down, they can just sell it, and they get, there's no consequences to them of sell your Bitcoin, or they can just keep the Bitcoin if they want to, right? So to them, it's a good thing. I mean, it'll increase competition in lending. I think it'll completely change. Actually, this may be one of the reasons why even real estate could collapse, right? If more people are using Bitcoin as collateral, people stop using real estate as collateral. They move their value from real estate into Bitcoin, and it just changes everything. Because even for the banks, it's easier to sell real estate, or sorry, it's easier to sell Bitcoin than it is to sell real estate if something happens.
Yeah. You know, one thing that I've been thinking about is, if you look at housing prices out there, you might stumble upon a house that's, you know, 30% below market value, but then you look into some of the details and there's some caveat in there where it's ineligible to get a mortgage on it. So the piece of property that you can get a loan against and a loan for to buy, there ends up being a premium on that, right? It's much easier to buy a house if you can get a mortgage on it. So they have to price that house lower if you can't get a mortgage for it.
Right.
So it's the same thing with Bitcoin, right? If you're able to borrow against it and it becomes that pristine collateral, that's going to raise the value of that as an asset. It's the same thing with stocks.
100%.
So Metaplanet is a, you know, Bitcoin treasury company in Japan. You weren't able to borrow against Metaplanet shares because of the volatility. That just changed yesterday.
Wow.
So maybe that's going to make it so that Metaplanet becomes more valuable
because it has a new use case.
It has a new use case. You can borrow against it. You can use it as collateral. So that's what we're seeing with Bitcoin. We're seeing so many entrants into the space trying to lower that, of trying to make that use case happen for Bitcoin as collateral, which is just going to raise the value of that as an asset.
Because they want your Bitcoin. It's their incentive. If you give them your Bitcoin as collateral, then they get to use it to create other loans. It's not like they have a limit to the number of loans that they can make, right? If you give them Bitcoin, there's no, like, if you look at the Federal Reserve requirements, the reserve requirement is 0. So if they have your Bitcoin, they can, I mean, if you look at it from another way, they can easily scam you too, right? If they get your Bitcoin, they have self-custody of it, they can keep it. So that's one of the downsides. But then again, they're giving you fiat in exchange for it. So you can enjoy your life, right? You're giving away some of your Bitcoin. You're not selling it. You enjoy some of your life. It's a trade-off that you might want to take, but for most people, they're usually not willing to do the education to make the right trade-offs.
Yeah. So I got to go here pretty soon, boys. I don't know if we want to wrap up or if there's maybe some final stuff. What do you guys think?
I just wanted to say a couple different things here. I saw a question. Somebody was asking why their question wasn't addressed. Well, number one, there's about 5,000 chats in there today. It's impossible for us to even address them or even see them all. So the one thing that we do here is just like the Bitcoin network, right? If you want your transaction sent quicker with priority, you pay more of a fee. If you want your question asked, guaranteed, send a super chat, send a zap. Exact same thing. We can't. We've been here for 2 hours almost. We talked about as many as we could. So I just don't want anybody in the comments bitching about not getting their question. That's one way to guarantee that you won't get your question answered, is to beg us to answer your question. Same with this one. Isaac's, they asked this question like 4 times. I had it started, but too much. We don't want spam here. There's enough comments in there. We want to keep the signal here. And what was the other thing I wanted to say? I don't know. What do you guys got? Final thoughts? We should wrap this up. You think?
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, I gotta go. So yeah. But
yeah. I mean, me and Rajat though, we might as well just wrap her up.
Yeah, I'm okay with wrapping it up.
Okay. So, big shout out today to all the Americans out there. Happy 4th of July. We just had our version of that on Tuesday. Forrest said that he was shooting fireworks off all night on that night.
Yeah.
But
yeah, right.
Anyways, thanks.
Watch your fingers out there, neighbors.
Yes, no doubt. Thanks everybody so much for being here. We have 2,873 people in here right now.
Wow.
That is by far an all-time high on the show. And we really appreciate everybody showing up here. We appreciate the super chats, the zaps. Mark was the fat one of the day, 33,333 sats. And somebody also sent 75,000 in the other day. This was not during the live stream or anything, but anonymous 75,000 sat zap to the QR code. So whoever that was, I hope you're watching this, and thank you.
That's crazy.
Amazing.
Join the community.
Yeah.
Oh yes,
community. We'll post that.
So you're gonna should we set it?
Go ahead.
Should we set a deadline on that for the 21?
How about Monday?
Monday works
for me.
So you guys have this weekend if you've been considering the community, and there's a 7-day free trial, so you can hop in there, check it out. And again, we are in early days, so it's just going to get better and better on that community, and you can lock in your price for it before we double it on Monday from 21 to 42.
We're at 61 members.
Crazy.
Wow. So big shout out to everybody watching today. Shout out to everybody who will be watching this later, the recorded version of that. Maybe somebody is out partying. I thought it was going to be a slower show today, boys. 4th of July, I thought people would be outside on the boat. But thanks for being here. So
Bitcoin's better than boats.
There it is. I was going to ask for final words, but that's Rajat's. Forrest, you got any last words?
No. Yeah, just stack sats. That's it.
Stack sats. Like it. Add value to the world, exchange all your fake assets for real ones, and you will be, whoa, we just got a 21. Can you stick around for a minute here, Forrest?
Yeah, I guess so.
It's hard to walk out on a $20 super chat here.
All right, let's do it.
Oh, it's about Kaspa. Okay.
Fantastic.
We'll read it. It's a $20 super chat. We'll read it.
I've been being harassed by Kaspa people on Twitter because I talked negatively about it once.
That's okay.
Anyway, yeah.
It says, I love y'all. TradFi inflation forced me to research Bitcoin. However, Bitcoin forced me to learn Kaspa. I found more about Bitcoin when I learned more about Bitcoin when I learned about Kaspa. Doesn't that spark a question?
I guess the question. So to me, what Kaspa is perfect at is it's perfect at convincing somebody that knows a little bit about Bitcoin to buy Kaspa. It's like when you don't know anything about crypto, you buy XRP, you buy a bunch of crap. When you know a little bit about Bitcoin, Kaspa is right there to say, like, you don't know enough about decentralization. We're going to convince you that this is the better Bitcoin. It's for people that have a little bit of knowledge about Bitcoin, then they buy Kaspa. Kaspa has serious problems with decentralization. I mean, there's estimates of how much this chain grows, but there's 10 transactions per second. If you think about the amount of data that creates, it makes it impossible to run as an individual to run an archival node of Kaspa. So there's a few data centers out there that are capable of the bandwidth of the hardware requirements to keep up a ledger like that. And that's who you're trusting. That's who you end up trusting if you're running a pruned node. So the beauty and the real value of Bitcoin is that there's an ethos and community sense that node runners are the most important aspect of it. With every other cryptocurrency, that is not the case. And that is the huge differentiator with Bitcoin. So Kaspa making it next to impossible to run an archival node means that there's no ethos of looking out for the node runner. So, and they'll convince you otherwise. There's tons of devs and tons of people in there that'll say, "Oh, prune nodes are totally fine. The way we do prune nodes is better because we get it socially instead of consensus, and we don't have to run through an archival node to even run a prune node, and blah blah blah," and all this bullshit, basically, all this bullshit. And they do all that to say we've solved the trilemma. That's the big selling feature of Kaspa. We've solved the trilemma. We're decentralized, secure, and fast. And it's just not true. There's always a trade-off. And the trade-off is that you can only run a prune node with 3 days of data in any reasonable sense as an individual. And therefore, you're relying on the information of an archival node and the other nodes out there. And what happens if one of them changes something? What if they go back into the logs of their ledger and change something? And then everything is based off of that infactual history. And so, yeah, I mean, there's always trade-offs. And in my opinion, Kaspa preys on the people that have learned a little bit about Bitcoin. They understand a little bit about sound money, and they see, oh, Kaspa is just better technology. That's what it preys on, and it's just not. I mean, price it in Bitcoin. Understand the network effects of Bitcoin. Understand that there is a trade-off with the trilemma of blockchain technology, and understand that there is no other new Bitcoin. The new Bitcoin is Bitcoin.
Well said. I don't want to, take anything away from that. The only thing that I would add to that is, the network size, right? You ask any person on this planet right now, I would say like 98% of people, they don't know what Bitcoin is, but they've heard the word Bitcoin. And so that's important. When you want something to a global asset, a global network, it has to be well known. And Bitcoin's spent 16 years doing that. Very good job. Some people have bad opinions. Good. Doesn't matter. Brand recognition. Everybody knows who Bitcoin is. Nobody knows what Kaspa is. Therefore, it's never going to get any sort of traction. And the other thing I would say that, just like Forrest was talking about there, the reason why Bitcoin is actually going to win this is because even though it doesn't have the speed of Kaspa, there's layers being built on top of Bitcoin, like Lightning, Liquid, eCash, and probably many more to come, that will give it that transactional flow while still maintaining the layer one network and allowing it to be fully decentralized and allowing people to run full nodes because they can, because the space requirement isn't the same.
Yeah, and King of Kings said something here. I mean, maybe they're talking about something in the chat, but I think they're referencing Kaspa here, saying they can coexist. That's a huge selling feature and a huge marketing ploy by Kaspa as well. Oh, we're digital silver to Bitcoin's digital gold. Bitcoin is going to be a store of value. We can coexist. Well, you can hold and store value in Bitcoin, and then you can transact with something like Kaspa that's much faster. It just doesn't make sense in a digital form to have a digital silver. We have extremely fast payments with Bitcoin. It's called Lightning. It's a layer 2. We've decided to scale in layers, which makes a lot more sense to have Lightning payments, Bitcoin transactions. And so coexisting doesn't really make any sense. And if you look back into the history of bimetallism, which is gold coinage and silver coinage, it was a disaster. Nobody knew how to value things between these two things, and it converged on the one sound money, which became the gold standard. And then gold failed at being fast enough, so then there was the paperization of it. And what we have now is Bitcoin being digital gold in a very bad definition, I would say, because it doesn't really explain everything about Bitcoin. But then we have the speed of Bitcoin on the layer 2, right? But Lightning is not paper Bitcoin. It's just Bitcoin in a channel where you can do payments really quickly and then settle on that base layer. So the technology's there. There's absolutely no need for Kaspa, in my opinion, except to enrich the early adopters of it. And that's what you're seeing now. Is you're seeing huge outperformance, huge marketing towards all these different aspects that I've talked about. And now we can see less and less interest and more dumping, and the price appreciation of that asset has gone way down, priced in Bitcoin and priced in dollars too. So I don't know, man.
Litecoin said the same thing too earlier. And look at the Bitcoin Litecoin chart for the last 5 years. They claim to be the silver of Bitcoin's gold, and it hasn't been. It definitely hasn't been. Okay.
All right.
Well, boys, big shout out to Paul. Thank you for another $10 super chat, Paul.
Amazing.
The legend, Paul himself. Big shout out here too. We got, I think, 6 or 7 new members here since we started the stream for the school. Ladarius, Stephen, Michael, Rodney, Ali, and Daniel all joined the school community, the newest founding fathers of the community over there. There's one more thing here that I saw, but I might just skip it because this has been the longest goodbye ever. Okay, well, we'll save it for the next time. So anyways, oh, that's what it was. Make sure, I know there's a lot of people watching on Twitter and other channels right now, but if you haven't subscribed to the Maple Bitcoin channel yet, just shared the link there. I'm going to have all these links, the school, the channel here, everything will be in the comments below. So that's it, boys.
All right.
Have yourselves an amazing weekend, especially those in the US, our southern neighbors. And we'll be right back here next week, same time. Thanks, fellas.
See ya.